we live in an age of digital media, so why isn't this stuff digital? It should be, right? And then you're showing that what's wonderful is you can't do that with a physical deck, right? You've just expressed a prioritization. You've said that's more important, right? You can put those cards in order of priority. You can lay them out, you can flip them out, you can tap each one individually to flip it over, right? You
Oops.
can pinch and zoom to make them bigger and smaller.
And then also, and like you mentioned, there's the guide element, and then also if there's video, for example,
right.
tap on the
Yeah,
video,
and there's no
in.
video on these because we haven't
Yeah,
created one, but it's there, right?
Let's also be honest, Nick, much respect. You rustled this up quite fast.
Right.
And
well, but let's take a dive into your deck, right?
let's do
You
that.
and I talked ages ago, and you're like, "Oh, I should make a deck," and I was like, "Yeah, you should." And you've gone and done it, and it's freaking amazing. It's brilliant,
Yeah,
right?
and let's be honest, I didn't say that. You told me as a challenge, like, why aren't you creating your own one? I remember that clearly because when we first met. So I'll talk, but the thing is this is still in beta version, and I tap my hat to you for
your deck is in, but that's the whole, that is like, let's just, whoa. That's a big statement, right? Because we're in the digital realm, we can release this right now. 100 people can have it. They can give you feedback, right? Gutenberg has a lot to answer for. He makes everyone perfectionists, and they don't and won't and never release their product because they're tweaking it. You've got you took a fair amount of cajoling and nurturing to get your deck onto Deckible, right? But now you've got it. I think you would your next deck. I think you'd load it. Your next deck, you would load it straight away in really raw form, right? Because in the last week, I helped you a bit to get it going, but then you've taken over that and you've managed everything. You've changed all the artwork. You've done everything, right? That's what a digital experience should be.
I want you to break in where I just want to talk through it. So just for folks who haven't seen this, right? So Deckible is available on Android and on iOS, right? So you can go grab it. And if I remember correctly, it also works on iPad, right?
Yeah. And an iPad too, right? Yeah, just saying it runs iPad.
The landing page is layout of all the decks that you have in your this is what I have in my pocket, right? So I have a couple here.
Right.
Of course, there's a marketplace that I can go explore and I can go and find more. So I've been digging into, and there's a couple of really interesting decks here already. How many is there on Deckible at the moment?
900.
And from tarot to spirituality vibes. I have a couple of friends, someone who's in the chat, Matun, he definitely needs to get into the spirituality thing. He needs that. But also what's kind of curious is
how many times have you reviewed it? Probably 10 of the decks you've reviewed are on Deckible.
So, for example, my previous live stream was with Jens Malstead, and his card deck is here. And what's really cool is that even I try to link it off in some of my reviews, but sometimes I forget because I'm just the old fart. But we do link it in the videos. But sometimes I would, before I even own the deck, I think I did it with Jens's deck. I downloaded on Deckible and I clicked through it, explored it, and I went, okay, cool. I want to have a physical version that I want to have in my hands, which is great. Also, just from what I appreciate, because the other day I found this one is, for example, when you have certain activities, there's like event calendar that you go back to. So, for example, I was messing around with my own card deck. So if I click on that, for example, it brings up the stuff that I've done, right? So there's all my cards, which is quite interesting. Let's jump into it.
You had one of Dave Gray's cards there, I think.
So his card deck is over here, right? So for example, if I want to, I always jump into
just randomly pick a card.
You can do that. For example, do a quick draw, right? So you have the cards there and flip them over. So there's all the models, for example. You can zoom in and explore them even more. You can make notes on them, right? For example, I haven't even explored all of this stuff, right? And this is all controllable, right? So I just want to go to, because the other thing is also there's a whole for people who are, by the way, if you wanted to create a card deck, and do people just sign up and reach out to you? Because I think there's everybody's like silly South African who hassles you. Like, how's the
people literally turn up, discover Deckible, sign up, watch the video, load a deck, and go, right? It really is.
And there's even I discovered this card deck explaining how to do it.
Right, there is totally. And that, by the way, the deck that explains how to do it comes with all the data to load that deck. So you can, rather than create your own deck, you can just say, oh, I'll grab all the data. You follow the process and you've loaded that deck yourself, and you go, oh, I get it. Now I can go and do this, right? Because I tell people think too much. And this is all Gutenberg's fault, right? We're all perfectionists, but you don't want to start anything until we know the way to the end. And Deckible is complete opposite to that. Just start. It's going to guide you through it. you've seen the checklist. The checklist is an amazing feature that steps you through everything that's missing and takes you to the place you need to go to fix it. And the list shrinks and grows as you go until you're ready to publish, right?
And so just to give people watching this context, so when you're in the back end of Deckible, I've gone through this experience now where all the cards get uploaded, there's certain processes, but what was really useful is that there's a whole list of different checks that you go through. So like, I mean, for example, I didn't have proper descriptions. There were some cards that was missing that I had to upload. But then I just want to also, and then you can of course see the updates in real time. So my cards at the moment, it'll be available soon. I want to launch it really soon, but at the moment it's in test mode. And then of course, once I'm ready, I submit it and you have a team that approves them, right? So there's a little bit of quality control going through.
Yeah.
But ultimately I can now view this. So for example, there's all this content here, I can control it. And I updated it, and there's nice little graphics, and some of this is generated by the system. And then also you have the concept of a guidebook, right? So in this case, I've just used separate cards, but one of the examples that you used earlier is that a card can have multiple sides in Deckible. So I can have one card with several steps that kind of goes into the whole card deck or space. So there's the instructions of how to use it. So this is my CX enabler deck. So my card deck is that I've created as part of a customer experience toolkit, and there's 2 decks in it. So one is the CX enabler and one is the CX challenge cards. And these are the challenge cards, and you can explore them. I always like the blank canvas, and then you can go drag them in. So for the use case, I guess I would see it being used like this. And then at some point you can also flip them over. But the other thing that I still have to do here, which I think is also really cool, is that you can upload a video. So I need a bit of explaining around how to use this. So I'll add some video content around here, which is great. And you can do it individually for the cards and also for the whole deck, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
And then let's quickly, because I'm quite excited about this. So one of the viewers, Stephen Anderson, is also helping with this deck. There's a lot more to it, but for example, he helped me with a lot of so this is a bunch of how might we statements. So it's really about exploring basic challenges and customer experience. And so at the front, you have this how might we statement, but then there's a whole bunch of metadata that supports this, right? So there's the little design that you can go through.
If you're new to UX design and you pick up this deck, they've just stood on your shoulders every year, all those, 10,000 hours or X years or whatever, how many years you've been doing this, right? That you've liaised on this deck with Stephen as well, right? So we're standing on both of your shoulders, right?
So it was really rewarding working through it.
So and I think if someone uses this, they're getting a lot of insight, a lot of massive step up.
I hope this, as soon as it's ready to launch, hopefully soon, to see what people do with this. And also, I like the idea because there's something that I haven't really, and you can nudge it, is that, of course, I'm looking also having a physical version of this, but now bringing it into Deckible makes it already accessible. But then also the fact that you break through this nervousness, like Gutenberg blockage, like you talk about, right? It's right there.
Totally. And people also look at your response, your reaction was you got curious about the deck. So you looked at it on Deckible for free for 3 days. You can then buy it or not buy it, right? And people also don't want to wait. If you don't give them the deck when they want it, they've got to wait for it to arrive and they've got to pay for postage. The deck, where do you keep the stock? Keep it in Europe, to keep it in the US, to keep it in the UK, inside or outside the EU. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you end up paying Amazon for this and paying for that. But you're not going to make a lot of money from it unless you produce a lot of decks, right?
And I must say to you, the one thing that has been very nerve-wracking for me, this is even smaller, but I think it's a big topic, is that one of the aspects that I need to still sort out is that I haven't really, I did the best I can, and also favors from friends and people who've supported me, but copy checking on the actual cards. And now I don't think you're going to see any South African Afrikaans in here, but I would love for someone to look through it. But now that blocks it from being launched, right? And now here,
because you can launch it and update it. This is not a printed copy.
That's the cool thing with the digital version, right?
Right. Honestly, people hold off, and I guarantee you still hold off and you'll still find a typo. So you're better off putting it out there. That's the value of crowdsourcing. People love to tell you've got a typo and then you fix it and nobody died. right?
Another thing also that I think I need to mention, this is not so of course the content's in the cloud, right? But at some point, people might have seen this, is that you download the deck onto your phone, right? So you can also of course, remove it.
Right.
But so for example,
it's just like Audible. So you download the book and then you can use Deckible. Once you've downloaded it, you can use the deck when you've got no Wi-Fi, right? It runs on a plane, in a cave, wherever you're having that offsite, you can use Deckible.
And I must say, just to talk about Dave's example, which I think was quite clever, is that he launched his version of the card deck during the Kickstarter campaign for this actual deck, right? And because the thing is also that the issue is that I'm waiting for the physical version, and maybe you have delays, like that happens all the time, and there's an issue or printing issues, and then the deck was available immediately.
You end up with dinging and denting, and you lose a card. Dent a card, you're like, oh, I love this. So you don't take it places because you cherish it too much, right? You can't lose a card. You can't ding and dent a card. It remembers every time you've drawn a card. It keeps the notes that when you drew that card, right? So that there's a lot of value that a platform adds on top of a physical deck.